Welcome to the deep dive. If you've ever found yourself, navigating that intersection between business strategy and technology, or maybe trying to figure out complex laws presented from totally different angles, well, this deep dive is definitely for you.
Mm.
Today, we're tackling two distinct but equally important topics, really designed to give you that aha moment.
Yeah.
So first up, we're going to demystify the, well, the multifaceted role of a business analyst. You hear the term, but what do they really do? Why are they so crucial, kind of the unsung heroes in organizations today? And what's the unique skill set they bring?
And then we'll pivot completely. We're going to dissect the, let's say, highly debated big, beautiful bill,
Okay.
but we'll look at it through the lens of two very different political viewpoints.
Right.
Our mission here really is to equip you with the insights to understand not just what each side is saying, but why they're framing it that way, giving you the tools to see the nuances in political info.
Exactly. And our sources for this deep dive, we've got a pretty comprehensive Wikipedia article on business analysts, solid overview there.
Okay.
And then two YouTube transcripts. One's from NBC News, giving kind of an overview of the bill's legislative journey, more mainstream perhaps.
Right.
And the other is from Senator Bernie Sanders, detailing a very critical viewpoint. We're here just to give you a clear, impartial look at what these sources actually say.
Sounds good.
So, okay. Let's kick things off with the world of the business analyst. I mean, it sounds like a pretty broad title, right? So if you're trying to understand their core identity, where do we even begin?
Well, yeah, at its heart, a business analyst, or BA as they're often called, is really the bridge builder in a company.
Bridge builder, I like that.
Yeah, they're the person who processes, interprets, and documents all sorts of things, business processes, products, services, even software. And they do it by analyzing data. Their central role, really invaluable, is making sure business efficiency just skyrockets. Because they have this unique, almost bilingual knowledge of both IT and business functions.
That seems critical.
Oh, it is. Because often, the tech side and the business side, they speak completely different languages. It leads to costly misunderstandings, wasted resources.
Right, been there.
So BAs act as these indispensable translators, making sure everyone's actually on the same page.
That's a really crucial point, the translator idea. So what does that actually look like day to day? What kind of tasks need this specialized translation?
Well, their job descriptions are incredibly varied, honestly.
Mm.
They're often creating detailed business analyses. They handle budgeting and forecasting, crafting business strategies, planning and monitoring projects, doing variance analysis that's basically figuring out why things didn't go exactly as planned.
Oh, okay.
And defining really precise business requirements for stakeholders. They're all about outlining problems, spotting opportunities, and then crafting, actionable solutions for the business.
It's interesting because, yeah, the title is analyst, but it's clearly not just about crunching spreadsheets, is it?
Not at all.
They seem involved in such a surprising range of things: financial analysis, QA, market analysis, even organizational development, testing solutions.
Exactly.
They're really analyzing data to get meaningful insights, right?
Yeah.
For growth, cutting costs, understanding customers, watching economic trends. It really shows they're not just reporting numbers, but turning them into actual actions.
That's exactly right. And what's fascinating here is how the role kind of stretches across four key areas or levels of business functions. Kathleen B. Haas described these as operational, project, enterprise, and competitive focuses.
Okay, 4 levels.
Yeah, each needs a slightly different lens.
So starting with operational, how do BAs tackle that level?
Okay, operational. Here, BAs really dive into the nitty-gritty. They use big data to analyze how those day-to-day operations impact the overall business value. They're looking to maximize efficiency through, concrete actions, like identifying cost cuts, maybe recommending investments in better equipment,
Makes sense.
improving how employees work efficiently, or even increasing production of the really popular products. It's about optimizing the engine itself,
Gotcha. Optimizing the engine. And then moving to a project focus. What's the BA's unique contribution there?
Right, projects. In a project focus, BAs become super critical for making sure areas that might have been overlooked historically get proper attention.
Ah, okay.
They're essential for integrating strategic planning with the information systems and technology. A key part of this is using modeling tools.
Modeling tools.
Yeah, to demonstrate the as-is state, like how a process works now, and the to-be state, showing how it should work after improvements.
Oh, that's helpful.
It really helps visualize the transformation before you even start spending money or changing things.
That visualization sounds incredibly useful. Okay, moving up again. Enterprise focus. How does the BA's role shift there?
So enterprise focus. Here, BAs help optimize the development of innovative solutions using technology, but across the entire organization. It's broader.
Okay, big picture.
Exactly. This involves things like building the current and future business architecture, conducting analysis of opportunities and problems at that kind of holistic level,
Mm-hmm.
proposing new projects that actually align with the overall company goals, and validating those longer-term forecasts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're really thinking about the whole organization's direction.
And then finally, the competitive focus. That sounds like a whole different ballgame.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
Here, BAs analyze the competitive environment. They're trying to develop meaningful strategies, especially in areas like marketing.
Okay.
They're observing consumer behavior, trying to understand, brand distinctiveness, how easily someone might switch to a competitor's product substitutability, and just general product performance out there in the market.
So keeping the company ahead.
Exactly. It's all about staying ahead of the curve.
Okay, so with all these really varied responsibilities across those 4 levels, what kind of specific toolkit do BAs need? What skills are absolutely essential for someone to succeed here?
Right. Good question. They need a really powerful combination of both hard and soft skills. It's not just one or the other.
Okay.
So on the soft side, we're talking strong oral and written communication, facilitation skills, guiding meetings effectively.
Important.
Very. Interpersonal and consultative skills, sharp analytical thinking, robust problem-solving abilities, being incredibly detail-oriented.
Can't miss the details.
Definitely not. And capable of delivering really high-level accuracy. Oh, and organizational skills are absolutely non-negotiable.
Okay, that's the soft side. And then the technical side, what knowledge do they need there?
That would be things like knowledge of business structure, stakeholder analysis, really understanding who the key players are and what they need.
Right.
Requirements engineering, cost-benefit analysis, process modeling, and definitely a solid foundational understanding of networks, databases, and other technology. You don't have to be a coder necessarily, but you need to understand the tech landscape.
Got it. Now, beyond those specific skills, you mentioned broader categorized skill sets. Can you elaborate a bit? Because it sounds like they do more than just analyze.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they act as mediators. They provide that crucial liaison support role between business folks and the IT professionals, making sure those two worlds actually connect and understand each other.
The translators again.
Exactly. And they excel at requirements elicitation. That's basically the art of digging deep, not just asking surface questions, to really uncover and articulate the true needs of a system or a process. Sometimes needs that the users themselves haven't even fully realized.
That sounds tricky.
It can be. But this meticulous work ensures that the solutions they help build actually address the real problems. It minimizes waste, prevents costly reworks down the line.
So if I'm getting this right, they're not just finding problems, but they're actively shaping the how, like the implementation and redesign of processes.
Precisely, yeah. They're deeply involved in business modeling. So forecasting and analyzing current and future performance to chart the best path forward.
Okay.
They perform business problem analysis, figuring out exactly how issues impact performance and what the most effective ways are to overcome them.
Right.
And lastly, there's information system, or HIRS, strategy evaluation. That means continuously monitoring strategic plans to make sure they're still the best way to meet business goals. Often involves comparing how you're doing against competitors and what's happening in the wider industry.
Wow. Okay. So given all of that, for someone listening who might be considering this career path, what are the typical qualifications? What do they need to get into this kind of multifaceted role?
Well, a bachelor's degree is usually the starting point, often in fields like information technology, business administration, or economics. And many BAs also pursue a master's degree, things like business analytics, business informatics, data science, or management information systems. Those can significantly boost their skills and, honestly, their salary potential, too. Gives them an edge.
But it sounds like a really demanding role, even with all those qualifications. What challenges do BAs typically face? It can't all be smooth sailing.
No, definitely not. I mean, with access to huge amounts of data comes pretty significant challenges. Data privacy is a big one, especially now with social media and big data everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Huge issue.
Huge. They also have to manage analytical resources really carefully, avoid high initial costs, ensure team functionality and success in group dynamics because they often work across different teams.
Right. Lots of collaboration.
Exactly. And they have to effectively communicate complex results to maybe external parties or even internal ones who just don't understand the specialized terminology.
That translation piece again.
It really is.
Yeah.
Ignoring any of these factors, privacy, costs, team dynamics, communication, can lead to inaccurate conclusions, failed projects. It really highlights how much a BA has to be this kind of multidisciplinary chameleon.
Yeah.
Able to adapt to tech challenges, people challenges.
Yeah.
It's not just crunching numbers, it's navigating human dynamics and complex systems. That's a really unique skill set to cultivate.
Okay, so we've really explored the world of the business analyst, this role that's all about using data and analysis to optimize outcomes, cut waste, forecast impact. And speaking of impact, our next deep dive pivots to a very different kind of analysis. We're looking at how a single piece of legislation can be, well, championed as big and beautiful by one side,
Right.
and at the same time condemned as one of the worst and most dangerous by another. How does one bill generate such radically different predictions about what it will actually do?
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is. So we're going to dissect the big, beautiful bill through two starkly contrasting political lenses.
Indeed. And our sources, NBC News and Senator Bernie Sanders, they offer very, very distinct views. From the NBC News perspective, President Trump describes this as his big, beautiful bill, framed as a massive tax cut designed to deliver on a whole bunch of his campaign promises.
Okay.
The core framing from this side really emphasizes the economic impact and, fulfilling those pledges he made.
And what were those specific promises as NBC highlighted them? What was this bill supposed to achieve, according to that report?
Well, key elements NBC pointed out include a huge $4.5 trillion extension of his tax cuts,
Wow.
a mass deportation plan, and also eliminating taxes on tips and overtime pay. The report noted that the vast majority of Republicans support this bill, seeing it as, fulfilling their party's platform.
But it wasn't like a completely smooth path, was it? Even within the Republican Party. NBC News mentioned some thorny issues being worked through, suggests some internal debate, right?
That's right. There were sticking points.
What were they?
Well, for instance, North Carolina's Tom Tillis. He was specifically concerned about how the bill would impact rural hospitals. That was a key concern for him.
Okay, rural hospitals.
And Wisconsin's Ron Johnson, he stated the bill just didn't cut enough spending. He wanted to make it much better from his perspective, meaning deeper cuts.
So different pressures even within the party.
Absolutely. And Speaker Mike Johnson of the House, he characterized the whole process as making sausage. Said he haven't slept maybe 6 hours this week. It really indicates the intense, round-the-clock negotiations needed to get everyone on board, even among allies.
Yeah, making sausage tells you a lot.
It does. Speaks to the complexity of actually legislating, even when you have broad party support on the surface.
Okay. Now, let's connect this to the bigger picture. Senator Bernie Sanders offers this starkly contrasting view of the same legislation, right? But he calls it the reconciliation bill.
Yes, that's the term he uses.
And maybe just for our listeners, it's important context that a reconciliation bill is a specific legislative process, right? It allows for faster passage of budget-related stuff, often with limited debate. And crucially, it can avoid a filibuster in the Senate.
Exactly.
So that context maybe helps understand the urgency and intensity of his critique, because it's a fast track for potentially major policy changes.
Absolutely. And, well, he doesn't pull any punches. He calls it one of the worst and most dangerous pieces of legislation ever brought forth in modern history.
Wow. Strong words.
Very strong. He argues it does exactly the opposite of what should be done, especially given what he sees as the crazies facing the country. His framing focuses intensely on the specific, granular human impact, particularly on vulnerable populations.
Okay.
Which is a key ideological difference from that broader economic framing we heard in the NBC report.
Right. And he focuses really heavily on healthcare, doesn't he? What specific severe impacts does he warn about if this bill were to actually pass?
Yeah, healthcare is central to his critique. He describes the current U.S. healthcare system as broken, dysfunctional, cruel, and wildly expensive. He notes that even though the U.S. spends almost twice as much per person on healthcare compared to other major countries, you still have 85 million Americans who are uninsured or underinsured.
85 million.
Yeah. And the U.S. remains the only major country not to guarantee health care as a human right. That's his starting point.
And this bill, he claims, would take that already, terrible situation and make it even worse. How would it do that, according to Sanders and the sources he's citing?
Well, according to the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, or CBO,
Okay, the CBO.
the legislation would cut Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act, the ACA, by over $1 trillion.
Oh, trillion.
Over $1 trillion. along with ending those enhanced premium credits that help people afford insurance. The direct result, the CBO projected, would be 16 million people losing their health insurance.
16 million people. That's just
Yeah.
a staggering number.
It is. The scale of those cuts is immense.
And what's striking is the specific kind of human impact he predicts beyond just losing insurance coverage.
Yes, exactly. He highlights that for the first time, it would force millions of people on Medicaid people earning as little as $16,000 a year to pay a $35 copayment every single time they visit a doctor.
Wow, $35 on that income.
Yeah. Furthermore, he cites estimates from Yale School of Public Health and the University of Pennsylvania,
Okay.
predicting that if this bill were enacted, over 50,000 Americans would die unnecessarily each and every year, simply due to reduced access to medical care.
50,000 deaths a year. That's sobering.
Yeah.
So what does all this mean for those critical services like rural hospitals, which Tillis was worried about too, and community health centers? They're often already stretched thin, right?
Absolutely. Sanders argues rural hospitals, many already struggling financially, would be forced to shut down, lay off essential workers, or substantially cut back on vital healthcare services. He calls it a potential disaster for rural America and community health centers. They provide primary care to about 32 million low-income and working-class Americans. They rely on Medicaid for 43% of the revenue.
Almost half.
Almost half. So huge cuts to Medicaid would just significantly reduce access to basic care for millions through those centers.
And what about specific groups like seniors and people with disabilities? How would the bill impact them, according to his analysis? They often rely on a specific type of care, don't they?
They do. Nursing home care, specifically. Medicaid provides over 60% of the revenue that nursing homes rely on nationally.
60%.
Yeah. And with something like 22% of seniors trying to survive on less than $15,000 a year, Sanders argues this legislation would make it much, much harder for them and for people with disabilities to get the care they desperately need in nursing homes. It directly impacts their ability to live with dignity and receive really essential services.
He also suggested, I think, that the uninsured rate would go up in every single state. Can you give us a sense of the scale of that increase he cited? Was it minor or?
No, he painted it as quite significant across the board. He cited specific state-by-state projected increases to illustrate the bill's broad impact.
Like what?
For example, he stated Vermont's uninsured rate would nearly double, going from 3.3% to 6%. Louisiana's would jump from 6.7% up to 12.4%.
Wow.
Washington State from 6.2% to 11%. And Florida, already higher, would go from 10.4% to over 18% uninsured. These numbers suggest a really significant rollback of coverage nationwide, hitting diverse states.
Okay. And it wasn't just healthcare that would be impacted, according to Sanders' analysis of the bill, was it?
Correct. He argued the bill would also cut $290 billion from nutrition programs, SNAP, things like that,
Oof.
affecting hungry kids, seniors,
Yeah.
and slash education funding by $350 billion. He summarized the whole bill as, in his words, in essence, exactly what Trumpism is about. Taking from the most vulnerable, he argued, to give massive tax breaks to billionaires. For him, that underscored the fundamental inequality baked into the legislation.
So we've really taken a deep dive into two very different kinds of analyses today. First, understanding that vital data-driven role of the business analyst in optimizing how organizations work, bridging those critical gaps between IT and business. And then, shifting gears completely, examining this intensely debated big, beautiful bill through two profoundly contrasting political lenses, one highlighting, economic benefits and campaign promises.
Right.
The other zeroing in on what it predicts as devastating human impacts and structural inequalities.
It really does highlight how crucial it is to carefully analyze information, doesn't it? Whether it's business data you're looking at for growth and efficiency or these complex legislative proposals that impact millions of lives.
Yeah.
What becomes crystal clear is how different perspectives can frame the exact same facts in incredibly diverse ways.
Yeah.
Often emphasizing, whatever aligns best with their core objectives or their ideological viewpoints.
Which brings us, I think, to a key question for you, the listener. How do you approach processing conflicting information like this? How do you try to discern the full scope of a proposal's potential impact, especially when the stakes feel so high?
Yeah.
What specific details or maybe differing frames from today's deep dive stood out most to you? What felt most revealing about how these different narratives get constructed? We hope this deep dive provides you with some valuable tools for that ongoing analysis.